I'm Elamin Abdelmahmoud, and this is Commotion. I think the place to start is right here.
It's a good girl, turn me on till the early morn. Let's get it on, let's get it on till the early morn. Girl, it's all good, just turn me on. Girl, don't sweat it, don't get agitated. Girl, go and rotate, cause anything you want, you know you must get it.
You wouldn't know because you weren't there. I was there, but you weren't there, and that's okay. From 2003, that is Jamaica's own Sean Paul with Get Busy. That's the first dancehall single to reach #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. And here's another cool fact that maybe you didn't know. The video for that song, I think you know the video for that song, but the video for that song, which is like everyone partying in this wild basement, it was shot in Woodbridge, Ontario by Toronto's own Director X. That video is symbolic of the close connection between Jamaican dancehall music and Canadian culture over the years, and you can learn about the roots of that relationship in a brand new book from Major Lazer MC Walshy Fire. It's called The Art of Dancehall, and it's a collection of event posters and party flyers that shows just how dancehall rose from the streets of Jamaica to become a global pop phenomenon. Muscle is here. He played a big part in piecing together the Canada chapter of that book. He's here to talk about our country's role in dancehall's evolution. Muscle, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you for actually having me today.
Dude, I'm happy that you're here. You're here to talk about the country's role in dancehall's evolution. Look, in this book, The Art of Dancehall, we see a number of posters and flyers for dancehall events in Toronto in the 80s and 90s. These came from your personal collection. When did you start collecting flyers? Like, how does that even happen? Do you go like, you know what, I'm going to save these?
Yeah, you know what? It actually happened in about either 88 or 89.
Yeah.
My sister's boyfriend at that time, he went to England. I said, listen, when you come back, bring me something. He said, okay, I'll bring you something. Yeah. He brought me back a flyer, that size there, 8.5 by 11. Yeah. I looked at it. It was very basic, very simple. But at that time, we didn't have the internet to really look around and see what's going on. Yeah. So for me, it was very mind-blowing because even the symbol where you'd see $1, it had the pound sign. I said, wow, this is interesting. So that really started me down the path of collecting these flyers.
Yeah, because you're like, hey, they roll differently there. So ours, so clearly this is the marker of like our culture.
For sure.
It reflects something about us. There is a rich history of funk and reggae music being made right here in this country and right here in Toronto by Jamaican immigrants dating back to the 60s and 70s. At what point did dancehall, which is like a much wilder, more electronic offshoot of reggae, start to kind of become the dominant flavor, would you say? How did that sound change what it means to live in the city?
I would say dancehall, well, reggae has been associated with Toronto, Canada for a long time, say probably the late 60s, early 70s. Yeah. Dancehall really came into play about the mid 80s. And that definitely, I would say dancehall is like the unruly brother, cousin, uncle, sister of reggae. Yeah. So then that's really when it came into play about the early 80s, and you could see the landscape started to change. And even from flyers, you could see that's when a lot of things started to happen at that point there.
I tell you, what's interesting about the flyers is that, like, as you kind of flip through the book, The Art of Dancehall, there's this interesting story just in the placement of the venues that are in the flyers, right? Because like, initially you'd find events happening kind of like obscure venues, kind of the outskirts of Toronto. And then by the time you hit the mid-90s, you see just more dancehall events happening in like pretty well-known spots. You're like, oh no, that's not on the outskirts. I know where that is. That's the center of the city. That's, the Danforth Music Hall, the Molson Amphitheater, now renamed. What does that tell you about how dancehall was perceived by the Jamaican community and the music industry in the city?
It was more of a evolution, but even if you look at those events happening at that time, it was a certain caliber of events that would happen in those spaces. Dancehall still to this day is still more of the outskirts. East-West is where it would happen. Yeah. But you'd have stuff that happens downtown. That's more of the commercially accepted one. So a lot of people that will go downtown, they wouldn't go to the outskirts, uptown, or anything like that. Yeah. So you could see by that time
detecting some coded language there, man. What are you trying to get at, Muscle?
Nothing at all.
What do you mean?
I mean, I just gave you a wink, and you told me, come on, man.
The camera caught the wink, dude. So I'm just saying, so how are they different, though? How is it different in the suburbs versus downtown?
Well, okay. I would say the suburbs would be more, as I said, the unruly stepbrother. That's where you get more of the real hardcore, straight from the streets of Jamaica. Yeah. In the more suburbs. When it comes to the city now, it's a bit more polished, where it's a bit more palatable for everybody. So then that's the real difference. You hardly find a crowd that would be uptown and then we'll go downtown also. So then that's basically the real difference right there.
First of all, one, my job is to translate the vibe that you're putting out because this is also an audio medium. And so some people may not be able to see you at the moment. And what they can't see is you being like, whoa, buddy. In the in the suburban venues, it was different. You want to talk about because we're talking about like banquet halls here, and they become the places where they host these parties. So how are they different? Muscle doesn't want to tell on the radio. It's fine, man. I get it. But okay, do you want to talk about like some of the main venues that maybe nurtured the culture?
Okay, you see, a lot of the venues back then, as you said, they were banquet halls, they were warehouses, they were house parties.
Yeah.
So at that time, it was a lot of. There wasn't no one staple venue per se, but they would move around. So then that's how the flyers came into place. Somebody would drop off flyers either at the same event that you're at a barber shop, at a West Indian restaurant or takeout place. And that's how you'd understand and know what's going on. But as I said, it was a real, if we're going to get 100% honest here, it was a real tough and rough environment at one time where anything could happen, where it's a lot of marijuana smoke.
Sure.
Sometimes
wasn't legal at the time.
Not legal at that time, no.
Nope.
Very dark, but the vibe and the energy was so electrifying.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Even if we're going to be honest again, sometimes gunshots would happen at some of these venues. So there would be a few unsavory things, but if you put that aside and really just enjoy what was happening, it was really electrifying, especially in those early 90s, late 80s, mid 90s. Next level.
One of the recurring themes of the show is I keep telling people I moved to Toronto in 2011, and every time that I say that, people look at me with such great sympathy. They go like, "Man, you missed a time," like you missed a window when there was like a real electricity happening, and there's a real sense of, well, now it's a little more polished in downtown, if you will. Just to once again translate the tone that you had earlier. But let me ask you this: throughout all this time, you start collecting flyers. At a certain point, did you start to like see these pieces of paper, like less as show announcements and more as like, no, I'm looking at a piece of art. What's in front of me is in fact a piece of art worth collecting and preserving for later?
It was more, I don't know if I seen it as a piece of art opposed to a timestamp. Where this is what's happening this day, this year, right now. This is what's being said. These are the DJs. These are the venues. This is how everything looks. To me, it was a real timestamp.
Right.
So once you take this thing here that's very discarded, after that date, nobody cares about it again.
Yeah.
But you look at it as a timestamp, I guess we'll be seeing the same thing as a piece of art.
Yeah.
But I'm seeing timestamp. But I couldn't articulate it that way in my mind.
Yeah.
I'm more seeing timestamp.
I guess like this is how Walshy Fire and you end up sort of having this conversation, right? Which is to say that the book is written by Walshy Fire, collected by Walshy Fire, and you are the archive. You are the keeper of this gigantic archive of all these flyers. There's a great line in the book from Walshy that says, "When it comes to color schemes on a flyer, nothing is more gangster than light pink and aqua blue." Do you agree? Are those like immediate colors that come to mind when you go like, yeah, that's gangsters?
Yeah, it's one of them, but you'd have a lot of different colors.
Yeah.
A lot of the tricolor effect. That's what was the big thing for those flyers. But definitely, if you see pink and baby blue and stuff, this is an interesting piece right here.
Okay, as you were collecting the flyers, do you kind of naturally start organizing them by theme or by style? You go like, oh, each country has their own kind of distinct kind of look. Does that immediately begin to emerge, or at the time you're like, no, I'm just interested in keeping these. These are parts of history to me.
It was, you could see that there was a clear distinction, but again, because I was in it, I was just happy to get the flyer. Anytime I went to New York, any record store, restaurant, anywhere I could get my hand on a flyer, I'm bringing it. But after you laid them all out, okay, I have flyers from Canada, I have flyers from Jamaica, I have flyers from the U.S. Once you start to really look at them, then you could see, okay, there's a clear difference here. Canada's more typography. U.S. at that time, there was more pictures, and it wasn't tricolor like how we had the tricolors. Jamaica was more hand-drawn and printed multiple times whatsoever. So you could definitely see that there was a difference. But again, while you're in it, you're just happy to get the flyer. I have something that I've never heard of this event before. I don't even know if it happened. I'm just happy to have the flyer.
Yeah, like the flyer is not a confirmation the event actually took place. But you're like,
not at all.
but someone put effort into making this flyer. I should say, you mentioned some of the differences between the countries there. One key difference that really sticks out in terms of the Canadian posters is a lot of scantily clad women, Muscle.
I knew.
What's going on there, man?
Listen,
what is that?
I knew you were gonna.
I'm not blaming
doubt,
you, but I'm like, hey, is that the only thing that gets people through the door? Question
listen,
mark. Yeah.
How you set it up, I knew without a doubt. That's where you're going.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure it was one person tried it. And it worked, and then that's how a lot of stuff happened in the entertainment industry. One person tried it, hey, it worked, and then let's move forward with it. Because again, when you look back at it, because I'm collected, I never really put that much stock into it. But then when you really look back and say, hey, there's a clear distinction. We have women in less clothes.
Yeah.
They might have women in more clothes. And other flyers don't have women at all.
They had no clothes. That's that. Less clothes is a generous way of describing it, but
could I tell you a story where?
Please do.
One time because I was a DJ at one point too, and we printed flyers. So again, we followed the model, would put in women on the flyers.
Sure.
But this woman here, I don't know what this the designer was thinking. She was completely naked. We had to draw underwear.
On the poster?
On the poster. We had to draw underwear on the girl.
Okay. You had to draw it like with your hand?
Hand draw with a black marker underwear.
Because the original image.
She didn't have on any.
But this is what I mean, though, is that like it eventually becomes an arms race where like I guess we have to put naked women on these posters because somebody else put less clothing. Like that's you're like, yep, that's welcome to the 80s and 90s.
Up the ante.
I can see that, and I can see that. It sounds like you certainly did. And in your defense, you were like, you know what? No, this is too far. Let's draw it with a pen. Yeah. Let me ask you this though, to just bring it back to the book, because there is a translation work that happens right between you collecting the flyers and saying these are worthy of collecting for a later moment. These are timestamps, and then you get to see them collected in this beautiful book from Walshy Fire. This, and I think a book necessarily sort of like elevates anything that is collected. It sort of says this is worthy of preserving and reflecting on. And there's kind of a journey that these flyers go through to get there. So when you see all these flyers that you've collected being presented in this beautiful book, The Art of Dancehall, what goes through your mind?
The first thing was the 16-year-old Muscle will be so proud, because a lot of those flyers you guys see in the book were actually on my bedroom wall.
Oh, wow.
You know how a lot of people would put up whoever their favorite artist out of a magazine, that would be up on their wall?
Sure.
Flyers. A lot of those flyers were actually on my wall in my bedroom.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. It's like, wow.
Yeah. From your wall to a book.
I couldn't fathom that. There was no way of seeing that when I started collecting these flyers. There was no way. It would be the best. I would think, okay, I'll bring over a couple of friends. We'll go through the flyers and talk about some old events. That was as far as it went. Then the internet came around. Okay, I might put it somewhere. But to see it in a book, that's in other countries and other people are reading and enjoying this. 16-year-old Muscle is super excited.
I think that's a really beautiful reflection, and also like it makes me think about how event promotion has changed so much now, in an era of social media, and like there's something about having a flyer that you preserve as a memory of the event, but also just like as a memory of the time. And then you get to social media posts, which are maybe a little bit less, preservable. They feel less like archive material in a way. So how would you say that this era of social media, how has that changed the ritual of handing out dancehall flyers, you think?
It's changed it a lot, but if you're still feet on the ground, there's still places where you could get your flyers. As I said, when you go to West Indian store, barbershop, and those, they're still there. They're not as common as in, I go to the designer, I push a button on Instagram, and 2,000 people see it. It's not readily as available, which to me makes it more exciting when I see a physical flyer that I want to collect. I collected a flyer up to last Saturday. I seen a flyer.
Muscle, you still collecting?
To this day. To this day.
You still got a pile, like a bunch of new flyers that you're still collecting.
Listen, I was in the green room and there was a flyer for this show. You know I have it in my jacket, right?
Muscle, you are the great archivist of flyers, and I appreciate your time, man. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, of course. It's been an absolute pleasure. Muscle is a Toronto-based dancehall archivist and host of the Entertainment Report podcast. A small sample, just a small sample, because he's got so many, including the new Commotion flyers, of his massive collection of dancehall flyers can be seen in Walshy Fire's new new book, The Art of Dancehall. That book is out now.